Alrighty, I'm going to be going over how I have my Geronimo set up. Kind of give some breakdown of what equipment I use and some little things, tips and tricks I found along the build. Because it's not too hard of a build, but there are a couple of things that I found that some other people might find useful. I'm just getting all the parts for it here so I can go over everything. Alright. So first, as you can see, I have all of my surfaces in these little covers I made out of like car window protectors or car window sunshades. They are just the ones with the foam on the inside. There's no metal on the inside, so they are good on the material. You can just kind of cut them to shape and they fit over real nice. Here's the elevator. Super light, really stiff. I haven't ever had any problems with it. Here's the elevator. Real light, real stiff, no problems with that. Really straightforward. Coming back to the tail here first, let's see, we'll take this one off. All of the tail, they go together by, there's little carbon pins that go up through the fuselage. And when I built it, I kind of thought that they didn't go into these little holes because it was a really tight fit, but you just have to kind of like try and get them in there, and then once you get them in, they go in nice and good, and they're really strong and stiff, and it leaves a good mounting point, so your surfaces back here don't have any slop or play. They're really tight. And you can just tack them with foam safe CA. You have to use foam safe CA with this plane because it'll melt the foam, but once you tack it with CA, you can kind of get the alignment correct with the wing and everything, and then I just went through and put epoxy on the joints to strengthen them up. One thing with this elevator mount was it wasn't exactly, it was straight this way, but it wasn't straight parallel to the wing, so I had to add a little bit of a lip on this side to raise up this side of the elevator, and you can see it just rests on these little pins, and screws in with a nylon M4 bolt right there. Really nice, really light, really solid. So now let's make our way up to the front. And for the wings, I used a really simple connection. These are the Dean's micro plug and socket, and I just use red for one wing and black for the other, but basically you just solder two signals, and then you solder your powers together and then your negatives together. And these connect right into the wing, right here. So red goes to red and black goes to black. The fuselage, or the canopy, just slides right off. It uses little carbon pins, again, to do it. And I have the Castle Talon 35 amp ESC. This ESC was recommended because there's 6 servos in this plane and it has a 7 amp BEC, so it can handle all the power without overstressing anything. And for the tail surfaces, I'm running the Hyperion DS09 digital servos. And in the wings, I'm running for the Ailerons, the DS09s, and then the flaps is the DS11s because they're a little more strong. I'm running a FreeSky radio system. This is the V8 R7 II receiver, so it's an 8-channel receiver. And then up in the front, I don't know if you can see in there, it's tucked way up in there. It's just the Hyperflight 300 size brushless motor that they have on their website. It works really good for this plane. I originally flew it on 2S, but it was a little underpowered, so I switched to these Gens Ace 1000 milliamp 3S packs. And they fit in here really snug and nice, so nothing moves around. Boom, like that. You plug in the XT30 and then you shove that down there and put the canopy back on. It doesn't move around, and it balances perfectly actually with this weight. I didn't have to use anything, and these weigh about 90 grams. I have the Vitaprop 11x6 carbon fiber propeller from Hyperflight as well. Works really good, gives plenty of thrust on 3S, and I can get a lot of climbs with these batteries too. The wing attaches by 4 M4 nylon screws. The only thing I would say about this plane that I didn't actually like that much was the mounting system, but it honestly works fine and I haven't had any problems with it. I would just recommend picking up some M4 by 30 nylon screws and some M4 by 20 for the tail surfaces, just because, I don't know if you can see this, but mine over the time have become stripped just because they're kind of malleable. So you can see that they're not too sharp anymore up in there. They're kind of stripped. So just make sure you pick up some extra M4 screws because they're a little tricky when you first start screwing them in because they're really sensitive. They'll crush really easy. So let's just slap this back on there. And we can go over the wings. Oh, also for the battery, to fit this 3S battery in, originally when I was using 2S, I didn't have to do this, but to fit the battery in, I did etch out the front of this canopy. As you can see, it's about as long as my fingernail here, but up here it's pretty short. That's just because the battery wouldn't fit if I didn't take that out, which isn't a problem. It doesn't do anything structurally. You can just kind of bore this out a little more if you need to. Also, this spinner that I have on here fits really nice, and it's also from Hyperflight. It's a 32mm spinner, I believe. Super high quality. And you almost don't even notice it when it's in the air. It's really, really form-fitting, which I like. So let's make our way to the wings now. Also in their protective cases that I've made. These are really easy to make, and they save your plane so much from hanger rash or anything like that. All the transportation. So, the wings. Really nice and visible. They got carbon up in the root. For this plane as well, you're going to have to cut your own slots to run the push rods out of the fuselage. I just used a Dremel and Dremeled away the carbon right here and then just glued the push rod sleeve in and just took a razor blade and cut it flush to the fuselage, and then the push rods run right through. And you also have to glue your boom on, so just make sure when I glued my boom on, I put the wings on first so I can get a visual with the tail down there where exactly 90 degrees was with the wing. So it's not hard to do. It's a little intimidating, but if you just use slow curing epoxy, so that way if you do notice that it's offset a little bit, you have time to come and tweak it to exactly where it needs to be. And also, there's not really any way to mount your push rod sleeves, so I just shoved them to the side and glued them to the carbon in there, and it holds them really nice, and there's no slop in the movement at all. And then I ran my 2.4 antennas right out the side of the fuselage and just covered them with some heat shrink so I could glue them to the carbon better. And I haven't had any range issues or fail-safes or anything with this yet, so I'm really happy with how it worked out. Here is a nice close-up of the Dean's micro plug and socket. I got these from Hyperflight, but basically you just solder your two signals, so an aileron signal, your flap signal, and then you solder the powers together and the negatives together. And it just leaves you with a little plug that you can plug right into your wing. Very simple, and I like it. Doesn't bother me at all. I know people have much cleaner ways of doing it, but this works perfectly for this simple plane that I have here. So here's the servo connection. They just all run through the wing right out to here. Here's the DS11 for the flaps. It gives me almost 90 degrees of flap throw, which slows this plane down incredibly, and you don't really need crow braking when you have your flap set up like that because you can drop in from vertical and it'll come right to your feet with no extra energy. And then here you can see for the ailerons, I have the DS9 or DS09 Hyperion servo, and these are really strong actually. I don't want to move them, but yeah, there's one wing. I did have to, for this servo, because it's a little thicker than the DS09, I did have to cut into the wing foam a little bit just to get it to sit flush. So you can kind of see on the top where it took some foam out, but it's not structural, it's still really strong. I put some foam safe CA up in there, so I haven't had any problems with it. It's really strong, really light, and I really, really like it. I haven't ever weighed this plane either, so we can get a weight on it and see what that will be all up. And then to attach the wings to the plane, included with the kit is a carbon spar. And it just slides right into there. And then this wing slides right on as well. And there's no like clicking or locking mechanism, it just sits like that, and then you screw it together onto the wing, and that's what holds it together. And that gap will go away once the screws go into the fuselage. The only thing that was a little tricky to me at first with this plane was actually putting the wings all together when you're going flying, but once you do it a couple times, it really doesn't take that long, and this plane really takes about 4 to 5 minutes to set up before you go fly. So it's not that long at all. And I like that it compacts really nice. I have a travel bag for it, I'll show you in a minute as well. So first, let's connect the red to the red. They have a little key on there so you can't plug it in backwards. And the black to the black. And then you just slide the wing halves together. Boom. You kind of just tuck your wires down into the fuselage, however they will go in there. And then you line up right with the wing saddle, like so. Check and make sure there's no wires sticking out. I usually take one of the longer screws first and just kind of stick it in there. Find the thread, screw it in about halfway with your hands, and then the recommended center of gravity for this plane, I think in the manual said 90 to 95 millimeters from the leading edge, and I believe I'm running mine right at the 95 millimeter mark. I flew it at 90 originally, and it just felt really nose heavy. I didn't like the characteristics. I like my planes to feel really light in the air and the elevator to be pretty sensitive, so I moved it back to 95 and it flies a lot better. But there it is, the plane's fully built, nice and solid. Let's go ahead and plug a battery in and we'll see I'll show you the throws that I have set up currently. I use the Free Sky Tyrannus X9D. And let's go down to the model. Geronimo. All right. Alrighty, so start with the tail throws first. Let's look at the rudder. It's not really perfect yet. I haven't gone through and dialed in everything for this plane, but it flies how I like it right now. So for now it's good. In the future I'll probably be tuning and figuring out what throws I really, really enjoy, but for now it's doing great. Here's the elevator throws, up and down, up, down, up, down. It doesn't need much elevator throw. Here, I'll show you what my flaps elevator setting is. So with full flaps, that's all the down elevator you need. Just a little bit, and it flies perfect with flaps, with that much down elevator. All right, let's go up to the wings. So here is the right aileron. And as you can see, I have my flaps moving with the ailerons as well. Not as much, but they move a little bit. Gives it a really nice turning feel. You don't have to use a lot of throat to turn really nice. And then here's the flaps for my thermal setting. Just a little bit, a couple millimeters down, and you can go a little bit more if you would like. And then here's the landing flap setting. And like I said, with that much flaps for landing, it just slows right down and plops at your feet. It does not carry any extra energy with it. So I don't really feel the need to set up crow braking with this plane. It just doesn't seem like it needs it. And we can do a little run up too with the power. On Hyperflight, it says, I believe it's around 750 grams or 40 grams is what the flying weight is supposed to be at, but I'm sure mine's heavier than that. Also, one more thing about this, just the servos up here, these Hyperion DS09s, they fit really well. They're kind of tight, as you can see in there, but they fit well. They sit right under the lip here so they can move freely, but just be wary of your servo selection for that, because it is a little tight. I'm sure if you've built gliders before, you probably know that. Here's the plane. The wing isn't hitting the table. On the tape, we have 772 grams or 27.23 ounces. So it's not too far off. It's about 30 grams heavier than what the factory said for the weight. But I'm happy with it. It flies really good. It floats really well. It really flies like a big DLG. I don't really have much to say bad about this plane. I really like it. I wanted to get a bigger, I've flown discus launch gliders and other gliders like this ASW-28, and there's a Blaster 2 back there, and then my Snipe, but I wanted something that was a little bigger, that kind of gave me the feel of flying a bigger glider, and this does the trick. It really, really flies well, and it takes up my whole room, so the big factor is there. This is the material I make the wing bags out of. It's just this sunshade material with foam on one side and reflective on the other. So yeah, that's the breakdown of the Geronimo 2.5 meter or 100-inch wingspan. I really enjoy it. It's a great plane, and it's not too hard to build and set up. All right, and the last thing I wanted to go over for this plane was how I transport it. So I got this Dakine snowboard bag from Amazon. It's the Tour 157 centimeter edition, and I believe it was like 30 or 40 bucks, and you just open it up. You can stick both of your wing halves. I usually just put the horizontal in between the wings. Both of the wing halves go in. I can fit up to another set of wings plus like 2 or 3 DLGs in here. Then after that, you close it, zip it on up, it's got this little pocket right here that I stick my batteries and supplies in, whatever I take to the field with me. Then for the fuselage, I cut these holes right here so I can fit 2 fuselages on the outside. And you basically just slide, put a rubber band on the propeller so it doesn't get caught on the lip in here. But you just slide these right in like that. And then I put a little Velcro strap right here so you can secure it down. Oops, wrong way. There we go. And your planes are ready to be transported, safe and sound.